when I was in campus, one of my, small side hustles was I used to sell shoes. That's actually when I started my very first businesses, which was doing t-shirt printing. I ventured into that business now with no capital, but just with this idea and this passion of saying, I think this is something that is worth.
And the fact that at the back of your mind, that new situation is pushing you.
Exactly. I got into dairy farming.
Then you were working then.
And I was working then. And I think, that was a very painful lesson. Yet, if you actually just take time to invest in yourself, and when I say invest in yourself, is more around how do you improve your skill set, right? How do you make yourself a more attractive individual, even to the next employer?
For you, a circumstance was pushing you to identify this need.
Yeah.
What about for some of us? Like for me, I don't think I'm an innovative person. For sure, I will just say it so how can I have another income stream? Can I get another source of income other than my main job? Because I think in this world today, it's important to have a backup. So if today my employer tells me it's over, does that mean now it means I cannot live the way I've been living? It means I'm going to move out. Will I sell my car? What are some of the things that I can do? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us again today. I am your host, Martha Nzomo. Welcome to the Money Matters podcast powered by MyZola. Just a bit of a summary about myself. I am an accredited financial advisor. So I help companies and individuals plan their finances, their investments, ranging from long-term. So things to do with retirement planning, children education covers, medium-term planning, emergency funds like money market funds. Also, let's say you're employed from employer A to B to C. I assist consolidate pensions, and I also assist you to leave a good legacy behind through creation of trust. So in today's episode, I am very, elated because the person we are having today will be telling us about how to make multiple streams of income, how to identify the right business gap or niche, and also how to make the most of your employment to be able to soon become your soon-to-be employer. So even before I go into that, in case you would want to reach out to me for some of the services that I've mentioned, my information, my details are in the description box below. And in case you're wondering what my Money Matters or MyZola is, please feel free to see all that in the video that's coming right up. Thank you.
We bring you MyZola, a money management mobile app with these powerful features. Budget, to plan where your money goes, set spending limits, and avoid impulse buying. Income, to track income sources and analyze your earning patterns. Expenses, to record daily expenses, track your spending habits, and avoid overspending. Savings, to plan for money you will save and track your savings. Investments, to plan for money you will invest and track your investments. Assets, to monitor value of your assets over time and get a complete view of financial worth. Loans, to plan for debt repayment and track progress towards becoming debt-free. Download MyZola on Google Play Store and App Store.
Steve, give us an introduction about yourself. Not the business official bit only, but also the fun bit. What your viewers might not know, what maybe I don't know. Please take over.
Sure. Thank you, Martha. As I said, Steve is my name. Happy to be here on this particular podcast. Definitely, I'm 2 meters tall. The one thing I tell everyone whenever I get into an elevator is that, yes, I'm tall, but I don't play basketball. Just to clear the air, because there's an assumption that every tall person has to be a basketball fan.
Yeah, that was actually going to be a question, but thanks for clearing that.
Yeah, exactly. But yes, I do have different hobbies, but just in terms of my introduction, I think I said, we are definitely good friends. We've been, I think we've worked together for quite some time.
Yeah.
But my background really has been in financial risk management. That's what I basically do on a day-to-day basis.
Okay.
And this, spans back from my educational background, all through my professional life, which I think we'll go through.
You will tell us what I did in subject etc. Okay.
Exactly. But then definitely, in case you're ever on the Kenyan roads and you see a very tall cyclist, that most likely is Steve. So, I'm here to champion also for cyclists' lives matter. So, that's one of my key hobbies. Every weekend, if you're able to join us,
Really?
we with the Extra Milers Club, we do cycling every weekend, and would be happy to host you guys.
Thanks. Actually, that means even if you want to reach out to Steve, his details will be in the description box. So even if we have viewers who are interested in cycling etc., I think they can reach out to you as well.
Yes, most definitely. Okay. You're welcome.
Okay. So you've mentioned about your hobbies etc. Steve, what's your passion? Like, what drives you? You've told me about financial risk management.
Yeah. So I think the topic around passion is an interesting one, because I realize, in life you try many things, right? When you just even go and Google about the aspect around passion and what drives you.
Yeah.
It's not something that comes, immediately as you start off life to say, for me, this is my passion. And I think it's been a journey for me.
Okay.
Just to be able to get to where I am now, and having to find out that, I really do enjoy anything that has to do with math. Fortunately or unfortunately.
That will never be me.
Yeah. And so it's been a journey of discovery, honestly. Starting off, from my, early days, I started off in banking and in risk management.
Yeah.
And at that point, I really didn't know, if that was my passion or that's what I was going to pursue really in life. And that took a tangent, so I started off in banking, went into healthcare. Went into healthcare advisory, which I did for about 3 years. Then I found my way back into banking, but now this time within consulting.
Okay.
So, I basically made my way back into banking, but, mostly now around the risk management space. And that really has been my mainstay for the last 8 years or so.
Wow.
So it's been a journey. And so what I think, from that entire interaction, what I came to really find out that I really enjoy doing is doing basically, sharing risk management information, right? Training people. I found out, over time that I really enjoyed empowering people, right?
Yeah.
And, more within my space.
Okay.
So it's been a journey of discovery. And so anything to do with math, tech, risk really is things that, inspire me.
Yeah.
And, I enjoy that. And I've kind of found my passion and formed my career around that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Even before now, talking about your career, do you mind sharing? Okay, I think let's start with your work life, etc. Maybe from high school. Then we can come talk about your personal finance journey, the money side of it. Okay, from the way you said, there's a point. Yes, you're employed. You've transitioned to a consultant. Could you just walk us through that in depth?
Sure. So I started off, as I said, from a banking perspective, right? And really out of campus, you were just literally trying to survive.
What course did you do in campus?
So I did actuarial science at the University of Nairobi. Having finished that, I was able to, get a job at Equity Bank, which was my first employer. And it was fortunate enough, it was within the risk space.
And did you get employed immediately?
No. Actually, so this was interesting because I always thought I would immediately after campus, I would go into, the typical, big four audit firms. And I really wanted to get into audit, which was very, very interesting. I was pursuing my ACCAs at that time. So I had this vision of, of getting into, into the big four. I went through that entire process. Fortunately or unfortunately, right? Actually, I didn't make the cut at that point, and it was a bit of a disappointment because for one of the firms that I was really looking to join, I'd even gone to the extent of looking for a house close to where close to my new workplace. I was really manifesting it.
Yeah,
and then they sent me a regret. And I was like, I was really, down for some time. But then, in the process, of course, then yes, I got the opportunity to work at Equity Bank. Basically, joined the risk team back in 2012.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's kind of where my banking journey started.
That's
right?
13 years ago.
Yeah, that's 13 years ago, right?
Okay.
My journey started there. Then in the process also, I was now doing my CFAs, basically the Chartered Financial Analyst program. And while I was in that process, right, is when now I, got into consulting. I got an opportunity now to get into healthcare advisory from that standpoint. Yeah.
Okay.
So it was interesting. Now I moved completely from banking, into healthcare, basically helping investors who are looking to, invest in the healthcare space within Africa.
Yeah.
So I did a lot of projects, around that particular space, and it was quite a bit of a tangent.
Why?
Yeah. So a tangent because then, healthcare was not something I understood, right? So I had a lot of learnings to do.
Of course. Industry.
Yeah, exactly. I got to understand what primary, secondary, tertiary care means. But it was very interesting. I had an opportunity to visit hospitals in India. I had an opportunity to visit hospitals in Nigeria. Do a lot of that, which was an interesting journey for 3 years.
Okay.
But then, I still had this yearning to go back into banking in one way or another. And so, with that, then I found my way back
again
through consulting.
Okay.
And so I've been in banking now for the past 8 or 9 years, and it's been an exciting journey.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Fair enough. Now I want you, because you're saying there was a point you were employed.
Yep.
Now you've run a consultancy independent. So take us through, like, maybe did you ever start a business in campus? How was it? Maybe pros and cons. Even if it was not in campus, when running a business, maybe you could just highlight some maybe pros and cons of that.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, well, my journey and my business journey really started off back in 2010. I think at that time I was in my second year of campus.
That's 15 years.
That's 15 years ago. Well, I could take it back further, into high school, when we used to.
Just tell us actually then from high school.
In high school, one of the things we used to do, which was very interesting, back in the day, most people probably will be watching this who not understand. We never used to have Spotify and, all this new technology now, right? A lot of things were either on a floppy drive or a CD.
Yes,
right?
yes.
So one of the things we used to do actually was, we used to, I know, people say, we used to pirate these things, but at that point in time, it was the only hustle we understood.
That was in high school,
right?
That
was in high school. So, we'd close school and then someone would be like, I want these 20 songs. So, would come back home, do my things in the laptop, get someone to go and burn these CDs for me. Then when I go back to school, I'm selling these things at 3-4 times
the cost of YouTube.
The cost of, and those are the initial days. Those were easy days where you just, that money was either to buy milk or bread just for survival.
Yeah, because you're in boarding school anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. But I think now, when I got into campus, I think as any other, let me say, typical, university student, one of the, life was easy then, right? It was just about surviving the week, go through, your classes, look forward to Friday and, enjoy the weekend, come back on Monday, do the same thing, right? Repeat. But then, interestingly, when I was in campus, one of my, small side hustles was I used to sell shoes.
Shoes.
I used to sell shoes.
Yeah,
shoes.
I've never even known that. How?
I used to sell shoes. So I used to I had an opportunity to, to visit a few offices where my siblings were working.
Okay.
And I would find people would be like, can I be able to actually get shoes? Because whenever I find tall people, we have unique problems.
Shoe size.
Shoe size is one of them. So I used to go and hunt for shoes, and I had this clientele of people who every month they would give me an order for a shoe.
How did you even think of now this business, like shoe business? Because me, when I was in campus, I was not even thinking.
Well, it was just one of those things that just came along. You meet someone and you're like, where do you get your shoes from? Then, someone is like, actually, I find a very big challenge even, getting a good supply of shoes.
Okay.
Most people take it for granted. You think you'll just walk into a Bata and walk out with it. Yeah. I can tell you, I have, like, ever since I left high school, I've never bought a shoe from, like, I never walked into a Bata shop and bought a shoe. Because, they'll tell you the maximum size they have is a 45 or a 46.
45, 40, what size is that? Like,
that's like and size 11, I think. Maximum, 10, 11.
You know what I'm bleeding to ask now?
So if anyone who is like size 12 and above, it's difficult.
What?
So so I had, through my interactions, I had found a few guys who were facing the same challenge.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I was like, actually, I have someone who has good shoes. So I would go, look for the shoes, at Gikomba and some of these places.
Wow.
Yeah. Back then, you don't have WhatsApp to take a picture and send to someone, right? So I would go.
How would you?
I would go place a deposit and tell this guy, I think this, if the guy accepts, I'm going to come back.
Oh, and
so
get,
so if there's a need to change, then I'll go and change.
Yeah.
So it was a nice little hustle just to make my weekend money, enjoy my Friday, Saturday. But then I think that changed a bit when I got my son when I was in campus.
Okay.
And at that point now I had to really like step up,
Okay.
Now you're a father, you're a student, you're just
all in one,
I'm moving from being a very, let me say, irresponsible individual, and now I have a family to take care of. You have to like get switched on.
Yeah.
So that's where now things really, stepped up.
Okay.
And I think the 9 months prior to to my son being born, I used to sleep like 1 or 2 hours, a day, because I was like this constant worry of how do I provide for this? How do I provide for my partner that time, for my child, who is coming? I used to have those.
Because that time you're thinking of yourself. Now you have 2 other people to think about.
And I still have school to manage, so it becomes a bit of a challenge. And so that's actually when I started my very first businesses, which was doing t-shirt printing,
Seriously?
Yes. Back in 2010, it was what you call vinyl printing was like a new technology. So in my many sleepless nights, I had actually come across this, when I was on the internet. And then there was an expo that was being done at KICC.
So you had attended this expo?
Yeah. Just so I attended the expo just to see, about, printing and that business, because I had time. And then I had this constant worry of how do I take,
provision.
So through that process, I got to see some very interesting technologies. I found some local suppliers who were just coming into Kenya. And so that's, I ventured into that business now with no capital, but just with this idea and this passion of saying, I think this is something that is worth.
And the fact that at the back of your mind, that new situation is pushing you.
Exactly. So I was really driven. Over the few months, I learned how to do Photoshop, Illustrator. In less than 3 months, I had in a way mastered, the key skills. And I realized that's when the point where you realize that it's not really about the lack of capital, it's just about the idea. Okay,
so how did you so you have the idea now, all these things, because they require money.
Yeah, they require money. So I think one of the things is, so I pitched this idea through my interactions with, the various offices I was going as I was supplying my shoes. I was still doing my shoe business. I found this one lady who was very curious to understand, what are some of the ideas that I actually have around, businesses. And so I pitched this idea to this lady, and she was really interested. And she was an expert who had just come into Kenya. And she was like, "How can I get this for my son back in their country?"
Oh, she's a foreigner.
She's a foreigner.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was just one of those things. So, I told her, these things actually you can get them from China, etc. And she was very keen. She was like, okay, so how much would it cost? So I did the math, but then I realized, she really wasn't doing this for me.
It's for the son back at home, yeah.
Yeah, but what I was able to do actually was to negotiate with the supplier on the other side.
The supplier where was the supplier?
In China.
Okay.
So I went to Alibaba and I got, this supplier for a heat press machine and, a vinyl cutting machine and some of these materials. So because I was doing bulk purchase, so I negotiated with the supplier to then say, please give me a discount on this 1 or 2 machines. So I paid a portion of it, because now I was making a bulk order. So whatever I needed probably to invest, I only put in about 20% because the supplier was generous enough to, to give me a deep discount on, on the machines.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how we started off the whole thing.
Okay.
Quite interesting that business has survived 15 years to date. I don't run it.
Okay.
But yes, a friend, I actually handed it over to a friend of mine.
Wow.
Who's kept it running for the past almost like 6 years after I parted ways, with that.
Wow.
But that really was the start of, of my business ventures.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. So it was able, when the time came, it was able to generate good revenues to take care of you and now your family.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
Yes, it was. Okay. And then I think that spirit really has evolved over time. And, I found myself trying many, many other things.
Other businesses? Okay.
Yeah. So
care to share a few or one that memorable one?
A memorable one. I was, at some point, I always thought I would be an agripreneur. I see. They call them what, office farmers. Where you're in the office and you can still be doing farming.
Okay.
And I ventured into that at some point. Okay. I got into dairy farming.
Then you were working then.
And I was working then. And I think that was a very painful lesson.
Okay. Why?
Yeah. Painful in the sense that I think sometimes you want to evaluate a business just based on the final outcome. Then you realize there is a process of building that business.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't really do it when you're far away from it, right? So a lot of those, we'd call them what labor-intensive businesses are very engaging, and they need you to be there for it to actually run.
Yeah.
So I was getting into a business that I don't know. Right, I've invested. I went and bought, they call them what?
Fresh cows.
Yes, heifers. I got 3 of them from somewhere in Githunguri.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Put in, quite a bit of money into that. It was a bit of money then because it was a lot. Based on my earning ability, it was really a lot. And then I realized 8 months later, I had to shut that down.
Because you are working, so I'm curious, who was running that business for you while you were working?
Okay, so I set it up actually where my folks stay.
Okay.
Back in Nakuru. So I set up this whole thing.
Okay.
I got someone, I had someone to take care of,
day to day.
Yeah, day to day.
Okay. How well did you know the person? Was it someone that you just hired?
No, I didn't. So I just got recommendations, You just like, I need someone who can help me with this. Then you get the person. I put them on a payroll.
Yes.
Yeah, then I quickly learned that's a very interesting business to get into. What you think is an outcome. You're told, if you buy this cow, you'll get 40 liters every day.
So you do your math times 3.
You do the math, you put it on an Excel sheet and you just like, in the next 5 years, I'll be, Brookside 2.0 will be Steve.
Yeah.
Then you quickly realize it doesn't work that way, right? Like how to manage that business. There's, of course, the aspect around insurance and diseases and,
for the animals.
And even the market for the product. So you're sitting here in Nairobi and you're wondering why is my bank not calling me about credits? Then you realize it's a very expensive affair.
Yeah.
So so that we did that. We did what's it called, greenhouse farming at some point.
What?
And
for this, Steve, just for the viewers, you are still working, but then you had people who are running this for you.
Yes. I was still in employment at that time.
And I believe, because of just from my experience, I think with my dad, etc., like for such businesses, you have presence. It's always advisable that you're there, like 100%. Because I imagine you're getting into a meeting, then someone is calling you that the animals.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's, and I know we'll talk about side hustles, and that's the toll it takes on you, honestly. When you're doing something like that, there's constant worry. You're trying to think about, okay, how do I get this running? How do I still maintain my job?
The farm is not next door. You can't just walk and come back.
And come back. It's not, So because of all those challenges, and you kind of realize that you really have to pick something that, fits what you do, right? So it was, it's quite a challenge.
And it's it's I think, let me say, unique, because remember your background is, you did like your maths, your background is maths.
Yeah.
Now the field that you're trying to venture in, dairy farming, something different. You've never maybe done it on your own. You see, still, because it's leading me to my next question. As I'm sitting here, like, for you, it was circumstance that pushed you to try all these things,
Yes.
I believe.
Yeah.
Okay. But for someone maybe who is working, okay, like some of the what are the things they would consider? Because you've seen with what has been happening recently, there's no safe industry.
Yep.
Okay, I can't say that I'm in the banking space, I'm safe. Okay. Rules and regulations keep on changing from time to time. Okay. I'm in the NGO space, thinking I'm working in the best NGO, things have taken a toll on me. So as I'm working, are there things that I should consider, maybe just...
I think when I think about, like my lessons that I've learned, I think one of the things that people have to really appreciate is that there are different stages to your working life.
Okay.
And I think in this day and age, we want everything to be instant. Yeah.
I want money. I want to drive now.
Exactly. But then you realize, as with most things, they take time. There's a stage in your working life where you really literally have to learn, and in that point, you're not really earning. Yeah. But then after a certain point, so anywhere between your 20s to 30s, as you're working, really you're learning. A lot of what you're doing is learning. And you'll find that then the return may not really be commensurate,
to the efforts that you're putting in.
Exactly.
Sure.
After you've gained your experience, 10 or so years, then you get into a phase where you now start earning. Right. And that's now where it starts paying off.
Yes.
That investment, pays off. And so my words of advice normally when I even talk to my mentees, in different spheres, is that people just have to be patient and actually just go through that phase of, first of all, learning and then now going into earning. And
so
I know
learning to earning.
Yeah. And I know, someone will be like, oh, but I need to make money today.
Now.
Yeah. And I need to invest, and I need to buy land, and I need to, and there's all these pressures. You're seeing your friends here, they're buying land somewhere and we all go through those phases, right?
Yeah.
I think usually it just helps to take a step back, honestly, and realize that one of the key investments that you can actually make to yourself, for yourself when you're at that learning stage is actually to invest in yourself.
Invest, okay.
Yeah. Having gone through 10 or so various businesses, during that time, at that time, because you're not really earning, a lot of what you're doing is either on debt.
Yeah.
It's mostly on debt, right? And you get to learn very, very expensive lessons, especially you're trying to build, let me say, a business or a side hustle.
Yes.
With debt, is that you will most likely have to pay that debt, and that money is gone, right? And so those are expensive lessons. Yet, if you actually just take time to invest in yourself, and when I say invest in yourself, is more around how do you improve your skill set, right? How do you make yourself a more attractive individual, even to the next employer, The best thing about that is that, it only comes in once you've invested in yourself and you've created value and you have this brand equity, from a personal perspective, right? And really, that's what pays off the most in the long run. Okay. The thing about it is that then it is a test of patience. Unfortunately, it's a test of patience.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah, and I think that's what we now miss, in this day and age. Is that I want it tomorrow, so I want to set up, a nail bar here, and then I want to start, So you find yourself, you're moving, you're trying too many things, and really, it's not the best use of your time and money.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's a lesson you learn much later in life, and it's an expensive one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. That's interesting. So now learning to earning, I'm still going through the stages that you've mentioned, that because in reality, when you see it, even when, I think the stage you're in at work, etc., most of us, I see this person, I want to get there.
Yeah.
The learning stage is really the most painful, okay?
Exactly.
It means burning the midnight oil, etc. I'm leaving work late. Okay, I don't feel like, though you're saying I'm not being compensated for all this, yet I feel like my boss is leaving early and I'm the one staying late doing the reports,
Exactly.
those things.
Yeah.
And I think it's also experience, because when you talk about the earning, that now money comes, I have the knowledge, I have the skills, etc. So that is giving me a leverage over others and my work experience. Because in the earning stage, I don't think someone has 1 year experience or 2 years. The way you'll see it's a number, I've been here, I've been there, tried this, tried that, and it's brought me to this, okay? So I like that you highlighted that, especially for our viewers. And now, for you, a circumstance was pushing you to identify this need.
Yeah.
What about for some of us? Like for me, I don't think I'm an innovative person. For sure, I will just say it like, so how can I have another income stream? You see, the way you said something important. Your first business runs till today. Okay? So how am I able to build a business then? In quotes, let it go, not really completely, but I have someone trustworthy, they can do it. Am I training? Like, what are some of the things? Like right now, I'm sure you're not thinking about what are they doing, etc.
Yeah,
okay?
Exactly.
So how can I get another source of income other than my main job? Because I think in this world today, it's important to have a backup. So if today my employer tells me it's over, does that mean now it means I cannot live the way I've been living? It means I'm going to move out. Will I sell my car? Like, what are some of the things that I can do? Okay.
Yeah. I think, a very good question. And I think it's one of those battles that even you and I have had, right? Because I think, as you said, as you're going through life, right? And as you're thinking about side hustles and all that, I think you have to do it in a pragmatic and a stepwise manner. As I was doing all these experiments with money, right? One of the things that I never did and I honestly didn't even have was an emergency fund.
Wow.
Right? As in, and this I'm saying this, and I've taken a loan of 200,000 to go and buy cows that I don't know if they'll pay me back. And if at that point in time, if my employer had cut off my source of income, I would literally be on the brink. And that's why I say, see, it's a process. And if you're in that learning stage with a bit of earning, it's about setting the right structures for yourself.
Yeah.
First of all, to safeguard your livelihood. Or even just to give you a chance of surviving in case something happens, right?
Like
and I think
backup.
that's, when you talk about the backup, I don't think there's a better backup than having, an emergency fund, a cash flow that even if whatever happens, I know I can live for the next 6 to 9 months, without the pressures of, having to move out tomorrow and selling your car and, So, and that's why, I would say, even the whole wealth building process, it takes time, right? You have to start off from a perspective or from one step. And so the emergency fund is a big one, right? And before you even start setting up businesses, I would honestly tell, if you're in that stage, please build it. I think it's the most helpful thing, right? It gives you that comfort that, no matter what happens, it might be economic, it might be something that is very
beyond your control.
But at least you have that cushion. I think once you have that, then you have to think about, okay, then with the various investment options that we have today, right? How do you best leverage them, right? And, of course, the temptation here will be then to say, okay, maybe I have this money and I have this 50,000 shillings, what business do I want to start? That's one question. But then at the end of the day is, what is the business going to give you, right?
The return.
Yeah. So the point about here is actually the return, right? So you just ask yourself whether you want the return with a high risk.
Oh, yes.
Or you want the return,
medium risk.
Yeah. So of course, risk return, and this is what I preach, and I do this, of course, for banks and, all these other guys. But it's just about risk appetite. Yeah. So you'll be like, okay, with 50,000 shillings, I can go and, I don't know, buy eggs somewhere and go and sell, right? But you have to think about that process and the risk that comes with, right?
Yeah.
And the investment also. Remember also, if you are actually in a full-time job, you'll not be able to actually do that. You'll have to entrust someone else to do that for you, right?
Trust,
right? And, trust and money, you just don't, it's difficult, right? And so for me, if I was to do it again, to be very honest, as I said, I'll set up my emergency fund. From there, I would set up a structure that allows me to save consistently, even when I'm in my learning stage.
So no matter maybe how small my salary is, I can still...
Yeah, at least, you have a plan and you have a structure. So then when you get to your earning stage, it is not a new thing to you, because that's the time when you realize, you land into money, in the sense that, you're able to earn more, but you can't plan.
Yeah.
Right. And that's where you have all these issues about, someone is earning crazy money, but then they still, mid-month, they're broke completely.
Oh, yeah, it's true.
Right?
Spending habits.
Yeah, spending habits and all that. But then having that discipline, setting up that structure and being patient with it, honestly, is what pays off in the long run. And, I read a lot of, investment books here and there. And one of the things you look at, even when you look at, say, the stock market, right? And all these, indices that people track, realize that in the long run, right, you will always actually make money, even if you're investing in an index, right? It's slow, but then when you zoom out and take 10 years from it, then you realize it actually. And so setting up that structure and being patient with it, honestly, I think is the biggest return. And when you're in that phase, is how do you build skill set? Because even with all these investments that you've tried, you realize that the one that will give you the highest return, rather from my experience, has been my skill. There's nothing that has, paid off the highest compared to, my skill. Yeah. And so that investment I did in myself, in those earlier days, it pays off, today, tenfold, simply because I was, I kind of stumbled into it myself.
Yeah.
But, if I was to go back and do it again, I would really invest, time in myself, because then that skill is what really pays off the most with the least investment, right? The least investment, but then it just compounds because of, time and technology today, right? And so that would be my advice, instead of chasing multiple,
things at once when I am in my learning stage.
When you're in your learning stage, you'd rather learn, invest in yourself. When you're in your earning stage, just things will compound, and you'll have this multiply effect into in terms of what you can even negotiate for, even when you're going to another job, because then you have the skill, you have the experience, you have what it takes to distinguish yourself from someone else. Yeah. And you're not really just competing about all these other having. It's not a matter of having 10 side hustles and multiple streams. No, it's about how do I get the most from the time I have. Because the issue about, where you are and your boss is that your boss gets paid, 10 times more per hour compared to you, right? So how then do you actually, create that kind of an effect? And it only comes when you've honestly invested in yourself. Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. And also just something else, the way I think the subject about trust is very, very, very important. And the way you're saying, these days all of us are thinking about, hey, I need to get my side hustle. Like I'm at work, I'm like, oh, my side hustle. And the way you're saying, we ignore that thing that we have our skill at that point in time, because we can't all be at the same level. I think that is something always that we should always put into consideration. Now, having interacted with the MyZola app, okay, as a consultant, is it able to benefit, maybe if it's an entrepreneur, an individual, is it going to help the expenses? Maybe you could just touch about.
Yeah, and it's quite interesting that once I interacted with the app and the possibilities of what you can do, and I think especially when you are in that phase, and you're just trying to organize your finances, even as a consultant or just as an investor, right? You always need something that helps you, one, to be accountable, right, and also to kind of plan the future. I think so. One of the key aspects of the app that I really enjoy is how it helps you to anticipate your upcoming cash flows based on the investments that you've made. It could be you've bought a bond and you're expecting a coupon to come in.
Yes.
And that financial planning, not about just today, but also what comes in the future, because you realize the only way money makes money is by compounding, right? True. So then you just don't land into...
And then now start figuring it out.
Yeah, but then it helps you with that kind of planning. You're able to actually have one view that, from an income perspective, what do you expect from the various, investments you've made?
Yes.
And also from an expense perspective, what do you foresee coming along? And just have that planning, because if you don't have a plan, for sure, when you land into it, then you realize, actually I didn't buy that and I didn't buy this. You realize you're not planned for it, right? And that's one of the for me, I think I found that to be very, very helpful, because then I'm able to plan and say, okay, once I get this coupon in August,
in 6 months'
in
time,
6 months'
whatever.
time, I'm going to complement it with this much and invest it here, right? Because I know something else will be coming up, right?
Yeah.
And having that that plan and structure is really important. It helps just to put you in check. It's like the way you and I have this this process of just making sure you have an accountability partner.
Yes.
And I think it's important in your financial journey to actually have an accountability partner.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you can get swallowed into the trends of the day.
Hustles of life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, no problem. So do you have a parting shot, maybe something you'd want to tell our viewers, anything, advice?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure. I think, as I said, and we've kind of summarized it. Yeah. And I say this, it makes me, sometimes I think about it and I'm like, it makes me, the way they used to say wahenga walisema, makes
Going
me
back.
But I think the main parting shot I would honestly have is to tell people there is, as I said, there's no better investment than investing in yourself, right? And truly and honestly, patience pays. I think that's the one of my key parting shots, based on the many things that we've discussed and what I've seen. So just being patient with yourself, understanding that there's no one point where you'll all be the same, even if you started off running the race,
same.
right? And so having a longer term view of things helps to put things into perspective, and not really chase what you call short term gains, but actually having a long-term view and knowing that there will be longer-term gains, by being patient today, right?
Yeah, because shortcuts will always be short.
Yeah, exactly. They will always lead you to something else. And so you don't need to learn expensive lessons, I think that, you can build off, or you can stand on shoulders of those who've made those mistakes and, be a better person in that sense, and not have to, go through the same painful lessons, but just, learn from those lessons, and then now, take it forward in terms of then how do I actually, take my financial journey and get to financial independence, right?
Which is what your list tells
Yeah,
me.
exactly.
Okay.
Financial independence is, I think, is a key aspect that everyone should strive to, not just because it gets you, say, out of a paycheck, but really also gives you just the comfort to even enjoy your own job, right? By having that peace of mind that you're not really worried about what will happen next month. But
Yeah. Okay. And I think also from what you've said, from the learning stage to the earning stage, growth in whoever's career, there's always, and I keep, even when I speak to my clients, there's no point in time that now I'll be okay to start saving from that first paycheck, whatever small. And I think from how we have grown together, it's something that we've been able to see that as an intern, this is what I can set aside to me as a CEO today. Yeah. So I think, thank you so much for being our guest today.
Thank you.
I have personally learned a lot. I didn't know a lot of things about you, especially the t-shirt, shoes business. Yeah. So thank you so much. And we look forward to having you some other time in future.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Please remember to subscribe, like, and share this video. Thank you.
On the next episode, Martha engages Chiki Kuruka on how to monetize your passions and talents. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell to get informed when we upload it.